Good evening. I'd like to thank the Foundation for giving me and Melissa the opportunity to tell our story of the care we experienced here at Morristown Medical Center. If I appear nervous, it's because I am. So I wrote down a few thoughts and decided to practice in front of my 3 kids after dinner a few nights ago. Probably a mistake. Similar to what they do when we make them stand in front of us after they have to give a speech or a book report in front of their class. We wanted to give their chance to critique us, and that they did. So, thinking I would get some comments, Dad, you need to talk louder and more eye contact. Use more, be a good speaker, similar to the things I tell them. So I'm halfway through some of the notes I have here, and my youngest daughter, Nina, groaned and interrupted me partway through, and she said, Dad, you sound like a priest. And they said, what does that mean? And she said, there's just too many long pauses. All right, well, so much for confidence and trying to do that. So it certainly was an unedited response from a 10-year-old, but it got me to think of our story here and our message of thanks and hope, much like a priest's sermon. Here's our story. On November 14, 2011, 6 months ago, 2 co-workers and I were struck by a speeding car while standing at a job site in Newark. 2 of us were immediately rushed to the emergency room at University Hospital, and tragically one of us did not make it that far. I was in critical condition, suffering from extensive facial fractures, which included multiple level 1, 2, and 3 Lefort fractures, and anterior skull and orbital fractures, lower jaw fracture, and I guess meaning most of my bones in my face were crushed. At first, it was thought that my brain was not severely struck, but further investigation showed there was an area that was leaking fluid. One of my first memories after the accident was Melissa telling me, you're doing great. Doing great? What was I doing great from? I was laying in a bed with tubes and wires. I was partially awake, somewhere in and out of consciousness, but I realized I wasn't in good shape. I do remember saying, you're here in Morristown. You were in an accident. I've been working at Morristown for the past 8 years as a project manager with the William Blanchard Company. He's been managing many of the construction projects here on campus for over 20 years. And I spent many hours in many meetings, but none as a patient. Because of the quality of care that I witnessed while making my construction rounds, I told Melissa not long after I started here in 2004, if anything were ever to happen to me or the kids, make sure you get us to Morristown. I'm glad that she remembered that conversation and had the courage to move me against other well-meaning suggestions. I know that I've recovered quite well from so many serious injuries and still have a long recovery ahead. So when Michelle and Fiona from the Foundation came to speak to me about my journey here at the hospital, I was hopeful I would have something to talk about. My memories are only stories told by Melissa, my father, family, and friends. While I was heavily sedated, healing and getting stronger, and from what I heard, being well taken care of. I do remember, however, a visit from Pete Palmer. Many of you know Pete in the engineering and project management department at the hospital. He's a great guy. He visited me one day. He said he considers me and the whole Blanchard team part of the Morristown family. It certainly was a comfort to hear this, and I can assure all of you that I already felt like I was.
So Brett had this accident, and there I was along with his father wondering what was going to happen to him. We were in Newark, not very close to home, in an unfamiliar place and in such an unknown situation. Many close friends, co-workers of Brett's, and family members were by my side with suggestions of other hospitals and doctors in New Jersey and New York, but the words that Brett had said, if anything happens, just go to Morristown, just kept gnawing at me. He had felt so strongly about the quality care that he had seen here, yet the idea of moving Brett, at that time he was stable and in a safe environment, was creating a difficult decision that in the end was a fantastic decision. But I just kept having this feeling that if I could tell Brett once, and if he were awake, that he would be able to understand, and if I could tell him that he was in Morristown, I knew that the comfort level and the confidence that he had with the reputation of Morristown, that confidence alone would create at least a positive recovery environment for him. But in the end, a familiar place was not all that we experienced. And like Brett, I am not super comfortable talking in front of so many people. But I am so happy to have this opportunity tonight to pray, to give praise and thanks to everyone and all the workers that we met during Brett's almost 3-week stay. The doctors, nurses, and staff that helped change the neuro ICU from a place of tears to a place of hope were amazing. I'm in awe at what these people do day in and day out for their patients. We had the pleasure of meeting and admiring the fine work of Dr. Mazzola and Dr. Grzelnik, who, along with other doctors and assistants like Tom Cernas, worked on Brett for almost 16 hours, first with neurosurgery and then with facial reconstructive surgery. Their positive attitudes, the pride in their work, the excitement they had in making Brett better was and is amazing. To watch Dr. Mazzola, so excited weeks later, to see Brett walking and talking, and even tonight, to see her so excited, and to watch her give him a hug in the doctor's office, and just shows the amazing and touching and dedicated work she does. And to have Dr. Grzelnik and Tom Cernas show the 3D x-rays just a few hours after the operation and rant and rave over the way they placed titanium sheets around one spot and a titanium screw here and there was fantastic and exciting, totally incomprehensible to me. But it just shows the passion that these men and women have for literally saving people's lives. Though being in the ICU is about saving lives, after spending 9 days and nights with other wives, mothers, fathers, and children of other patients, so often the outcome was not as positive as Brett's. But I know with confidence in what I saw day in and day out, because I did not go home to sleep until the 5th day, I know that every individual, young and old, that was in the neuro ICU at the time we were in had been treated with the utmost respect. The nursing care was absolutely unbelievable. For 12 hours, and it was 12 hours straight, there was nonstop, passionate, and devoted care. The nurses took care of their patients, and from the first night that Brett arrived and until we left, there was always respect. Brett could not really talk or respond much, but the nurses spoke to him about everything. When we first came in, the nurses must have put music on for him to listen to, and they must have asked him if he liked country music. Well, I guess Brett must have moaned something clearly stating no, because the nurses laughed and quickly turned the station to different music, and were happy to report Brett's reaction back to me. If the nurses needed to change a needle, they would say, "Mr. Lewis, we're going to change the needle now. I'll try to be careful," even while Brett was totally sedated. They greeted him with a "Hi, Brett," and a "Bye, Brett," every time. As I said, I spent the first few nights in a chair next to Brett, and would see the nurses coming in, going out, going to another patient, and moving all night long. In the morning, Brett's sisters would arrive, and I would say, "Oh, this nurse is so wonderful. I wish he or she didn't have to leave." But by 7 o'clock that night, he and his sisters would say, No, this nurse is so wonderful. Don't let that nurse leave." So it was amazing. But during our stay, within those 9 days, I do believe about 3 young adults, really children, died. I did not know their names, but I remember the parents' faces and our conversations at 2 in the morning, with the lights low in the patient lounge where we as relatives were allowed to make our temporary home, without any questions and with warmth and hospitality. And though none of us wanted to be where we were at that time, we were connected to a process of living each day, one day at a time, and truly appreciating the very, very small steps, if there even were any, and understanding that every minute something different may happen. We were guided through these steps by all the employees at Morristown. So on behalf of Brett and our family, I would personally just like to thank everyone at Morristown Medical Center. I am certain that there are so many people that we have not met and who have contributed to this awesome and really sometimes miraculous place. It really is, for me, a place where angels do seem to be roaming.
Oh, we're not almost done. I know Michelle's looking at her clock back there, but I'd like to say a couple final words and thank Dr. Grzelnik, Dr. Mazzola, and Tom Cernas, and the rest of the surgical team. In memory of Dave Seeley, he was the person standing next to me that morning when we were killed. We've given a gift at the foundation in his name. And the other coworker who was involved in the accident is doing much better after multiple surgery, and we're hoping to see him up and around soon. Lastly, I know, again, Michelle, we're looking at time and we want to get to dessert, but I want to end with a short story about a speech that I heard. And it was the first TV show that I remember listening to through my pill speaker. I wasn't able to see yet. It was a rerun of Coach Jim Valvano's speech in 1993 when he received the Arthur Ashe Awards at the ESPY Awards. It's a pretty emotional and moving speech for a guy who was full of tumors and cancers. I encourage all of you to listen to it, and it's really great. Coach Valvano spoke for 11 minutes and 32 seconds. Here's a very small portion of what he said. It's helped me reflect on some of the small things which are now big things during my recovery. He said, there are 3 things we should all do every day. We should do this every day of our lives. Number 1 is laugh. You should laugh every day. Number 2 is think. You should spend some time in thought. And number 3 is you should have your emotions move to tears. Could be happiness or joy, but think about it. If you laugh, if you think and you cry, that's a full day. That's a heck of a day. You do that 7 days a week, you're going to have something special. Thank you.